So, continuing with the Israel Diaries, our trip to Israel in the month of May, year 2023. This is the part 3 of the series. It's called The Way of Agony. We entered the old city through the Lion Gate. Jerusalem is known as the Lion of Judah, also known as St. Stephen's Gate, where he was stoned by Saul, the Apostle Paul. We proceeded to St. Anne Church. Christian tradition identifies St. Anne's Church as the home of Anne or Hannah and Joachim, the parents of Mary. Behind the church are the remains of ancient pools, a Roman temple, and churches. The pools have been identified with the pool of Bethesda, mentioned in the New Testament, where Jesus healed a crippled man by speaking to him. So the pictures shown here, these are archaeologically excavated sites of Pool of Bethesda. Following that, we proceeded to walk the Via Dolorosa, or it's also called the Way of the Suffering. Is believed to be the path that Jesus walked on the way to his crucifixion carrying the cross. It was uphill and challenging. It remembers at 14 stops the Passion of Christ. At the first 3 stations, Jesus was already scourged by the Roman governor and condemned to death by crucifixion. The scourging in those days rendered the victim near dead. See Mel Gibson's movie The Passion of Christ, you'll understand what I meant by that. Doing the walk up Via Dolorosa must have been extremely torturous. It's probably the most important thing for any Christian pilgrim to do while visiting Israel, the Via Dolorosa walkthrough in Jerusalem, which in a nutshell is walking through the route that Jesus took, carrying his cross from the place where he condemned guilty to the place of his crucifixion. Jesus' scourging was prophesied by Isaiah the prophet centuries ago. It says like this, "Yet it was our weakness he carried. It was our sorrows that weighed him down. And we thought his troubles were a punishment from God, a punishment for his own sins. But he was pierced for our rebellion, crushed for our sins. He was beaten so we could be whole. He was whipped so we could be healed. All of us like sheep have strayed away. We have left God's path to follow our own. Yet the Lord laid on him the sins of us all." Isaiah 53 verses 4 to 6. Walking through the old time of town of Jerusalem. Our first stop in this Via Dolorosa walkthrough was the monastery of Flagellation. According to the story, this is the site where Jesus met and condemned by Pontius Pilate. This event is held to have occurred at the site of Madrasa al-Umaria, 300 meters west of the Lion's Gate, which is still used as a school and can be entered with permission at specific times. There are 3 Roman Catholic churches at this site, taking their names from the events happened. The Church of the Condemnation and Imposition of the Cross, where Jesus sentenced to death; Church of the Flagellation, where Jesus was beaten by the Roman soldier; and the Church of Ecce Homo, the place of the Ecce Homo speech, the Behold the Man speech by Pontius Pilate, right after he crowned Jesus and presented him to the crowd for his crucifixion. At each station there is a symbolic marker. The third station, the site where Jesus fell down the first time carrying his cross, marked with a relief sculpture above the door of a small Polish chapel at the junction with Elwadagai Street. Although it is not written in the Bible, Jesus did meet with his mother Mary. It was at this 4th station where they commemorated it at the Armenian Catholic Church. The 5th station I can show here, that's a marker for the 5th station. At this station, Simon of Cyrene takes Jesus' cross and carries it for him. A chapel was built and named after him, Chapel of Simon of Cyrene. It goes uphill from the fifth station with a narrow street. The sixth station commemorated with the Church of Holy Face. This is where Saint Veronica wiped Jesus' face with her handkerchief, which is known as Veil of Veronica. However, this church is not open to the public. So this is the seventh station. This is where Jesus fell for the second time, marked with the Franciscan chapel. The eighth station where Jesus encountered a pious woman and is able to stop to give a sermon. And this station is marked with a cross and a Greek word called Nika, or victory, on the wall of a Greek Orthodox monastery. So this is the marker for the ninth station, where Jesus fall the third time. The fall is not actually located on the Via Dolorosa, instead being located at the entrance of the Ethiopian Orthodox monastery and the Coptic Orthodox monastery of Saint Anthony, which together forms the roof structure of the subterranean chapel of Saint Helena in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Now remember the soldiers who cast lots to divide clothes of Jesus? So the game that they used to play is called as the Game of Thrones. So archaeologists actually uncovered that game, and that is actually kept in under a glass case. So on the left is actually the Game of Thrones. It's a paper version, and on the right the actual game that is engraved on a stone, and it was uncovered by archaeologists and now kept in a glass frame. The stations up to Jesus' crucifixion, death and resurrection ends at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Station 10 to 14 are all inside the church. So this is the dome of the church, Holy Sepulchre Church, and this is basically under construction. There is some renovation happening there. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is also known as the Church of the Resurrection, which is the holiest site for Christianity. It contains two sites where Jesus was crucified and where he is said to have been buried and resurrected. This is one of the two sites Christians believe Jesus was crucified and the tomb of Jesus is located. The other location is at the Garden Tomb. Not all the 14 stations are recorded in the Bible. It consists of both biblical and traditional interpretation. Even the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is claimed to be where Jesus' tomb is, which may not be right as it was named during the Crusades, after several iterations of the destruction of Jerusalem by Romans, Ottomans and more. So this is an inside view of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which has the stations 10 to 14 of Via Dolorosa, Way of the Suffering. This is a Catholic church, and this location is the location they believe Jesus was crucified, and they do their prayers and offerings. So this is the location where they believe was the hill and Jesus was crucified there. So this is inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and this stone here, this stone where or the stone here where a woman in the church is cleaning with a white linen is part of the 14 stations, and Jesus was laid on this stone. That's what traditions believe. And there's a depiction where Jesus was taken off from the cross and laid on this stone. That is the stone. So that's what they believe traditionally. So this is a tomb. So this brown structure. This is a tomb, and they claim that Jesus was laid here, and this is inside the Church of Sepulchre. It's an empty tomb. On the way we saw the Last Supper room. It's a second story room in Jerusalem that commemorates the upper room in which Jesus shared the Last Supper with the disciples. It is located directly above the tomb of David and near the Dormition Abbey on Mount Zion. This location is also based on hearsay in Byzantine times. So this is the upper room, and currently it's a church. So there's a church in the upper room. So earlier I mentioned Christians believe there are possibly two sites where Jesus' tomb was located. So one is in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which I showed in the previous slide, and this site is the garden tomb. So the garden tomb is believed by many to be the garden and sepulchre of Joseph of Arimathea, and therefore a possible site of the resurrection of Jesus. The garden is owned and administered by the Garden Tomb Jerusalem Association, a Christian non-denominational charitable trust based in the United Kingdom. The Garden Tomb is an alternative site to the famous Holy Sepulchre for you to consider the crucifixion and resurrection of Lord Jesus Christ. The garden is a beautiful place in which we will discover several things that were all here on the night Jesus died and which match the accounts in the four Gospels. We never claimed to be in the right place as we could never prove that, but Jesus died is of little importance compared with why he died. So here we ask you to open the Bible and see what it says about vital Christian truths. When discovered in 1900s, the nebulous road site of the Garden Tomb was first proposed in 1842 by a German scholar, Otto Thenius. He suggested that the skull-faced cliff was a hill of Golgotha. So this is the skull-faced cliff. You can see the eyes and the nose and something like a mouth. So he suggested that the skull-faced cliff was a hill of Golgotha where Jesus was crucified. John's Gospel 19:17 describes the place of crucifixion as the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. The rock-hewn tomb nearby was found in 1867. The main advocate of this site was a British Army officer and administrator, Major General Charles Gordon, who visited Jerusalem in 1882 to 83. Though he had no academic education in history or archaeology, a dream assisted him to identify the cliff as a place where Jesus was crucified. For years the site was known as Gordon's Calvary, Calvary being Latin for Golgotha. The idea that the place of skull was named because of skull-like hill is a modern notion. Most early Christian commentators held that Golgotha was so named because it was a place of execution, where criminals' skulls and bones lay scattered. The Gospel do not reveal the precise location of Golgotha or Christ's sepulchre. They do say that Christ was crucified near but outside the city and by a well-traveled road, since passerby mocked him. He was buried in a tomb hewn out of rock in a nearby garden. In this picture, I'll show you. See, this is the Golgotha, the skull-faced rock. And if you move to the right, here currently it's a bus stand, so it's a public way. People used to walk, and this is just outside the city wall. So here, this picture, this is the city wall, and if you move right from here, this is the city wall here. So that is this one. This is the city wall, and in this picture it's here. So that is just outside the city. So people from within the city, they can actually see someone if they are crucified on this Golgotha, and it's a passerby way, so people can actually see. So it's like like they put like an example for people to see what will happen to them if they are punished by the Romans. So they used to crucify people near the passerby way or outside the city wall. Now the Garden Tomb is certainly outside the walls of the old city. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, however, is inside the walls. But it was outside until about a decade after the crucifixion of Christ, when the so-called Third North Wall was built by Herod Agrippa I. The present 16th century battlements constructed by the Turkish Sultan Suleiman the Significant follow the course of this 1st century wall. The fact was not known in General Gordon's time. All the tombs in the Garden Tomb area dated from 7 to 9 centuries BC, the time of Jeremiah or Isaiah rather than Jesus. but the tomb within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre were new in the time of Jesus. So it's a typical tomb was found in the garden. In the garden tomb, and this is a typical tomb which has a round stone kept on the mouth of the tomb. We took turns to walk and see inside the tomb. Now inside the tomb, this is the view inside the tomb. So there is a place to keep the body, and on the other side, say about three persons can stand inside the tomb. So the mouth of the tomb is very small. See here, this is the mouth of the tomb here, and this is the circular rock that is kept to close the mouth of the tomb. So this is the mouth of the tomb, and this is the place where they keep a body, and the body is actually kept there for 1 year, and after that they take the bones and again bury that. So there are 2 burials for a Jewish man when he dies, or a person when he dies. And then these are the spot where about 3 people can actually stand inside the tomb. And we got the opportunity to take communion at the garden tomb. So these are the steps where Peter preached, and 3,000 people got baptized and joined to the church. So, and this is the city wall, and that area was basically a place where people used to come and wash their feet, their hands. It's like a bathing area. There's a lot of pools on the right. See here, these are excavated sites, so there are a lot of bathing areas, and Peter baptized 3,000 people in this area. So Peter preached on these steps, and there is a depiction of how Peter and his disciples went into the temple, and they might have come out of the temple like this and stood on the stairs and preached. Jesus overturned money changers' table at this location. These places were dug up not too long ago. These very steps where Jesus walked. So these are the steps that is they dug up, and these are the steps where Jesus walked into the temple. The large stones here, you can see these large stones on these ones, very heavy, about maybe 2.5 ton each stone. But by the year 70 AD, the Romans completely destroyed. So you can see the rubble there. Completely destroyed the temple, and no stone were left on one another. The reason is that they wanted to take the gold that is in between the stones. The temple was actually burned down by during the Muslim times, and then the gold actually melted into the crevices of the stones, and the Romans wanted to remove the gold, so they overturned every stone to remove the gold. So this way the prophecy was fulfilled when Jesus said no stones will be left on one another looking at the temple. And see, these cubicles are the shops, or the money changers used to sit in that. And this area you can see the depth. So this structure here, that is a place where we actually walk into the temple. So this is a walkway, the current walkway, and they had to dig all this area to uncover these archaeological sites. So these are the very place where Jesus walked. This is the Wailing Wall, a holy site for the Jewish community. This is on the western side of the old city. One of the most controversial structure. Jerusalem is mostly identified in photos and pictures with this structure inside the wall of the old city. If you have noticed in my previous videos, I mentioned about this structure with a golden dome inside the old city. That is this one. So this is a mosque on Mount Moriah inside the old city. This is the very place where Abraham took Isaac to sacrifice him to God. So I thought I'll leave you with a picture or a wooden model of the temple. This is the curtain that goes into the most holy place. This is the holy place near the curtain, and this is the outer court. So this was the temple which we is referred in the Bible. When Jesus ascended to heaven, this curtain was tore, and we got an access to go into the most holy place and access directly to God through Jesus Christ.